Hello and welcome. I am Kerry Ann and I am joined this evening with Gavin. Hello, Gavin.
Hello.
And we are Seventh Sanctum Podcast, and we are joining you on a Wednesday. It was supposed to be on Monday, but we was a little bit poorly. I say we, I mean I was a little bit poorly. So we are here on a Wednesday, and we are talking everything paranormal, but particularly we're going to be looking at mimics, and we're going to be hearing a little bit about the folklore around mimics in the European culture more so, isn't it? But we'll be looking at all types of mimics and how we can come across them and how they present themselves and how sometimes we can be fooled. Um, Hello, Ben. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. Thank you. Feel free to join us in the chat, drop your comments, let us know your experiences. We'll be happy to hear from you. So, I want to start off by saying it's just kind of, you know, our paranormal week. So the team on Saturday last weekend, we actually went to investigate. So it's the first time I'm talking to you, Gavin, about it. But we
Mm.
actually went to investigate a location that hadn't been investigated before. It was incredible. It was an old church that was repurposed for another purpose. And we just so happened to be talking to the owners, and they were like, "Yeah, we'd love for you to have an investigation here." And it was phenomenal. We had some of the most amazing results. So we've got some photos from the weekend that I haven't put onto the page yet because, as I said, I was feeling quite poorly at the beginning of the week. So I'm hoping to put them on after today's live because we can talk about it a little bit and then you guys can go and have a look. But we did a couple of experiments. So the first experiments we did was table tipping, which is more, more kind of steeped in the spiritualist belief system when you think about the Victorian parlor games and things like that. We're quite a small team, and it was a private event as well. So uh, we knew the people that were coming along, but we had some really interesting conversations, which led to one of us asking, can women pass on this particular STD that was quite prominent around, King Henry VIII's kind of time? I'm sure you can imagine what I'm talking about. Um, Turns out they can. So this all come from the table tipping. We had a really difficult gentleman that come through, very unhappy, but actually it turned out his life wasn't great, and he made some dubious choices, and he weren't taking ownership of them. So it was interesting to say the least. And then we did the sensory deprivation where we was able to locate a part of the building. So we wasn't told much about the building, but we was directed to one particular area, and through the night the sensor kept going off. So it made an alarm noise and the light kept going off. So decided to go and do an experiment over there. And honestly, Gavin, it was the most uncomfortable I've ever been in an investigation. I
Mm.
constantly was looking over my shoulder. I'm going to put a picture of this location, this particular area on the page, but it was almost like they'd created like in spiritualism we'd call it a cabinet. It would be where someone who was doing trance would sit in, but it was almost like one that was attached to the wall, and just behind on the wall with the cabinet was this beautiful stained glass window that was obviously original for the church. And then next to it, where the cabinet come out, there was a phone that didn't work, and then there was a wall, but it felt like a window, and I'm constantly looking at it. And in the end, I'm thinking to myself, I'm sure that's not a window. And I shone like a torch, and it wasn't. Honestly, when something just feels like it's on your back. And so I'm looking over, and in the and whilst this person's doing this experiment, so headphones on, mask on, white noise, and they're just picking up little bits. Now, not everyone agrees with this experiment. And, you know, that's the thing with paranormal research. There's no absolute definites. But nevertheless, things were coming through. And she said, ha ha, you hurt her. So, like, who? And then she said, we're talking to you, or we're talking about you. That's what she's talking about, you. Um, and so I'm sitting there and I was like, okay, so I'm asking these questions very quietly like this so that the person with the headphones and the white noise can't hear me. And she said, "I just want to rip your face off." And so I was like, "Oh, okay. Is there a reason for this? Is there a reason why this is you feel this way about me?" And then with that, we took a picture and it looked like someone, now it could be pareidolia, it could be because it was wood, but it looked like someone was, if this is her face, it looked like someone was going like this to her. And so it was like, "Ooh, okay." And then with that, she said, "I don't know if you can hear me. I'm sure I'm speaking loud, but I want to come out." So we touched her leg and she come out, and she said there was someone standing right there and he was not nice. So another person went in, and I've swapped chairs. I'm thinking, ooh, is it because I was just sitting there, or genuinely have they got a dislike for me? It was because I'm just sitting there, or do they not like me? So I moved around and I and put poor Daryl. Daryl sat next to him instead. Um, he's completely skeptic, and even that, and he was sitting on the other side of the cabinet, so he couldn't necessarily see me because of it being quite dark. But every now and then I could see him do this over to the window. And so I said to him, "Do you think that's a window there?" He said, "No, I feel like I keep seeing someone there. I feel like someone's there." He said, "But no one's there." And then with that, the girl that was under this time, she went, "It's a portal." And so we kind of carried on a little bit and stopped. But whether it is or not, whether you believe in portals, but in this church at the back of it, very uncomfortable. It completely filled to the rest of the place. And yeah, they said there was a portal, but it's never been investigated before. So there's nothing to kind of validate or kind of other people's experiences. There's nothing we can have a frame of reference for. So anyway, yeah, it was an interesting one this weekend. What do you think about that experience?
Like, it might just be because I'm a bit of a nerd, but with the window thing, I know at one point they did building tax via windows. So you see loads of like really old buildings have bricked up like some of their windows because all the rich people were like, fuck, am I paying for 16? Excuse my French. Paying for 16 windows. I'll just pay for 8. So then they bricked up 8 of the windows. So then they only paid window tax for 8 windows rather than 16. But the property didn't shrink in size, just the amount of windows did. I don't know how old the building is,
I
but it is possible that like the window was once upon a time there and then got bricked up because they didn't want to pay tax. But I don't know if churches were exempt from that or not either.
I think that'd be a really interesting thing to look at. It's a really, really old church, and it's not too far from um, a castle. And they were typically kind of built together, weren't they? There was often there'd
Yeah,
be a kind of church in the same area as where there would be a castle. Obviously, the church, no, I take that back. The church was built later because the castle's quite old. But um, yeah, it's been there for a very long time. It
there was
was very strange. It was very
I
strange.
saw a thing recently. I don't I can't remember where it was or what temple it was, but they were excavating an old Catholic monastery, and underneath they found ruins of a temple for like pagan gods, and they literally just built straight on top of the ruins, like they didn't dig outside of the walls; they just dug straight down, and there was the like pagan temple ruins direct underneath. I can imagine like from the stories you hear from America, where they build on top of ancient burial grounds and ancient sacred spaces and stuff, how building that new layer of religion and history and stuff causes like massive spiritual turmoil.
And I
So,
think that's a very good point. I think that's a very valid point because there would be no, unless there was something that was a little bit untoward going on in the church, um, the repurposing of it wasn't into another religious area. Um, but I think that makes a lot of sense. It just is very strange, honestly. And I think it was quite difficult for us to actually walk around the actual grounds of this church as well because it was quite overgrown, and we weren't quite sure where we were putting our feet and stuff like that. So I think it was just safer for us to just not kind of wander around outside in the dark. But I think it would be really interesting because the other kind of the other theory was that there was someone buried, like just that probably wasn't very nice, or something linked to the person that was buried in that corner of the churchyard. But again, it's all like that's the thing with the paranormal, isn't it? It's all like it's
I never get on
hypothesis
well in
and
churches.
yeah. Well,
There's
to
a
be fair,
church, like ruins of a church near me, called Greyfriars in Dunwich.
okay.
Um, and Dunwich is the town that fell into the sea. And rumor is like on a full moon, when the tide's just right, you can hear the bells of the old churches out at sea. Um,
Wow.
but this particular church is
Cliffhanger.
the only church that me, my wife, and one of us, because you just sit there and stare at the stars because it's just a ruin. It's like just some walls. It's a really small place. And they were Grey Friars. I don't know if you know what that is, but they were like peasant monk, beggar monks. Sorry, they didn't have any backing from the church or anything. They used to just get the peasants and stuff from the local area to support them. So they were like not very well off monks. And the atmosphere there is so relaxing and so calm that you could just like fall asleep under the stars. No matter how cold it is, you just feel warm and calm the entire time, and it is the weirdest sensation because it's pitch black, it's in the middle of nowhere, and there's just field all around. But it's like the complete opposite of any other experience I've had at a church or ruins or anything like that.
I think it's really. I think there's a lot to be said for the. Sorry, the geo. Still not quite recovered, so I apologise. Like when we think about geomapping and sacred areas, there's like for example, I talk about him quite a lot because I am a bit of a yeah, I do fan over him. But Konstantin Karatkov done a lot of research around changing the frequency of locations depending on kind of what happens in those areas. So, for example, sacred lands and places of worship. But he was also looking at how you could be able to predict places of disaster, so to speak, or accident prone areas depended on the geo mapping as well, what that frequency was. But I think some places where you have that set that intention and it's continuously done by a group of people, I think it has that ability to shift. Because
Mm.
if we think about priming, what does systematically drip thread that dark woods on your own outside ruins, definitely the serial killer in a mask somewhere lurking around. No matter how fast you run, they're going to be walking very slowly but catching you up, right? Um, so we think about priming. Really, that should have put you in a different place, but it might be that the frequency of that location was able to give a different sensation, like that revenant that you get from certain
Mm.
places of worship. It doesn't necessarily have to be churches, but like woodland area and things like that. You get that sense of revenance in you. So that's what it sounds like happened there.
Yeah, it's a crazy, crazy experience. Recommend it if you ever get a few hours free.
Absolutely, I will take the name of that location. We're currently looking at the moment for some locations for us to be able to visit in Essex. So we're trying to find places that aren't overly like saturated with paranormal research or ghost hunts that go in there all the time, because I think again that changes the
Mm.
haunting, because sometimes you end up investigating what is allegedly there as opposed to what could possibly be there. And so I'm trying to find some places that are in Essex that isn't somewhere that's overly investigated, but people just want some answers. So I always like to avoid residential places like people's homes. I feel like you go in people's houses with muddy feet, you don't know what you're going to kick up, and then you're like, all right, bye, cool, you got some ghosts, I'll see you later. Because I don't also necessarily agree with, and I understand when we talk about hauntings, we have that trapped spirit mentality. But I think the way that I perceive spirit is that if we're not moving forward, there's something that's holding us back, something that we haven't quite accepted. Or if you think about the spirit that at Colchester Castle, that he'd done some really kind of horrible things. And he acknowledged that they were really horrible things, but he blamed his lifestyle as to why he did it. If I wasn't this person or I didn't, and again, this is what we got from our own research and stuff. There's nothing that we've got that's concrete to validate this, but if just we think about that concept, um, you know, in spirit, we're supposed to be able to evolve. We're supposed to reflect. We're supposed to evolve, take accountability, see where we've gone wrong. Otherwise, we just come back and live that life again. So, don't necessarily agree with moving spirits on as well, which is why I try and avoid residential homes. Um, but I know that you've got so much with the mimics. I'm really looking forward to hearing that. But what's your? Because I know that when I said about, I feel like sometimes spirits aren't necessarily trapped. They are, but not because of more because of a self reflection or a self accountability. What's your perception of that?
Um, I don't know. It's kind of weird. Like I have I suppose there's a bit of a preconception that sometimes the spirits that you think you hear at a location aren't actually from the location; they're from you. Because, like with paganism, you have ancestor worship, and specifically with Slavic paganism, you have 13 generation ancestor worship, which is it's an incredible number of people that made it coincidental that you happened, and each generation has or stands for something to help you now, be it physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, whatever. And the further back you go, the bigger like the problem is before they help you. Like the 13th generation is almost entirely like for big religious and spiritual problems. So like if you
Okay.
were to go to a location and say, I don't know, ask the wrong question, the wrong thing, the wrong time, the wrong person answers, anything like that, it might not be the thing or the person that answered that you actually get a response from. It could be one of your ancestors that's going, no, enough of that. And that's why sometimes you get really conflicting and confusing answers from things that you think are the same things because they're not. There's things that are protecting you without you having active knowledge of it because that's what they're there for. There's the whole point of having spiritual like roots is that they're there to protect you spiritually, to stop you being a dum dum and making the wrong decision in the wrong place because they've been there, they've done it, they have different knowledge, maybe even more knowledge than we have of things that we don't know about. Um,
I think that is a really good kind of segue to be able to go into mimics. Actually, like, I like the way you did that. It was very subtle, but also like Kool Aid Man as well at the same time. It's very, very good. I love that. So when we think about, so my perception of mimics is going to be slightly different, or maybe not, but a lot of what I work with mimics, is when I think about the paranormal. That's where
mhm,
my kind of research is in. I know, I don't know how, I won't name anyone in particular, but for example, we had a member of my team that we went and done an investigation, and we ended up contacting a spirit, very ancient spirit, and this person somewhat mocked her, somewhat, but not overtly. It, from my perspective, probably tried to push it a little bit too far when then there was a hard boundary there. Um, anyway, this incredible spirit gave the most amazing evidence that evening, and honestly, some of the stuff that got shared um, about this particular member, with none of us had knowledge of, and they were able to validate and say, actually, yeah, these things are all true. I think it scared him, if I'm honest, or what worried him. Anyway, next day we kind of have a little group chat for the team, and he said I was in my room and I could hear my voice calling my dogs from another room. And I was like, okay, I think someone effed around and found out a little bit. I think what's happened there. But this person in particular is very kind of deep in his belief system, so was able to tap into the systems around him to kind of help whatever that was to move on. But that's when I think about mimics, that's the kind of experiences or that's the kind of knowledge that I have.
I mean, a lot of
So
them are like in the folklore. They are still considered spirits and things, just of different regions, areas, places. It's not all necessarily like uh, just a I suppose, disembodied spirit or person. I don't know. Like I say, I've only looked up a few because there's so many. Everywhere has so many legends and myths and things. But I divided them into categories to start with because I didn't know what else to do. And then I went
Yes.
for my favorite, almost horror-esque
Oh,
mimics.
I love.
So I don't know if you just want me to like read off my first list, which is human likeness by sight. And I've done it in high,
Okay.
medium, and low convincibility.
Oh, I
Um,
love this.
yeah,
I love the organization skills here.
it
So
doesn't happen
yes,
often.
tell me about your favorite. This. So you say it's like horror-esque. So that
No,
tells
so
me.
these I've got 14 different mimics from across Europe, and I've ranked them in three different categories, and then I have my favorite three based on the most horror movie like mimics that
Oh,
I think, uh, based on the little information you have from the folklore, is the last sort of category. Um,
I love that. I love it. Yep.
so I've got human likeness by sight, and high likeness by sight, meaning they're like indistinguishable from humans. So you have a doppelganger, you have a fetch, a strigori, and a selkie. The four
Right.
like
Should. I can't pronounce it. The
strigori.
right.
Yeah.
So I am aware of this particular one because of the Strain, the series The Strain,
Hmm.
and it's Romanian culture. Is because
Hmm.
I don't know if I've told you this already. I love Romania,
Hmm.
and they link it very much to Vlad the Impaler as well. In particular, this one.
Almost
So yeah,
anything you think you know about vampires is strigori based. Like in the
really,
folklore, they can turn into wolves, cats, bats, rats. They're sometimes dead, sometimes alive. They're based on either vengeful spirits that come back from the grave, or they're witches who imbue themselves with vengeful spirits. There's said to be like signs that a person's going to become a strigori, like born with extra digits and extra tail. Well, not that any of us are born with tails, but uh,
the
like
tailbone is a
extra,
little bit longer.
yeah, like extra appendages
Okay,
and stuff is a sign that later in life they might become a strigori. I don't know if historically that might have been cause enough for people to uh, act upon it, or if they just have extra scrutiny through their lives. But then they drink blood. They're technically not alive. They're not like the actual vampires. They're technically a spirit, so can't be killed in the same way. But yeah, more or less anything you think you know about vampires is from the Romanian Strigoi myths. Um, and when they died,
so
they
is
were
this when
impaled.
we? So when we think about the theory of like bats, vampires turning into bats, that's
Hmm.
where that comes from. But it's not just bats that they could turn into. There was a number of different ones, so wolves and
Yeah.
things like that.
Hmm.
Incredible. So
They're
when I
like
think about, oh, go on, sorry.
essentially. They're just like shapeshifters, but they appear mostly human, unless they're because there's Strigoi Morty, which is like a corpse, and then there's Strigoi Vi, which is a human, but then they can
Right.
use magic or whatever to turn themselves into a Strigoi by night. So during the day, they'd look like you and me, they'd act like you and me, and then at nighttime, they'd turn into these monsters, essentially. And then they drink blood and life essence to keep themselves sustained. Um,
Oh
so yeah, they
wow.
would be passable as humans during the day, which is, I guess, the bit where they're not like vampires. But um, I think they just took the it's particularly gruesome bits of it and turned it towards vampire movies and things.
And I suppose as well, because of with Vlad the Impaler, there was the impaling, which is a big part of what he did. So I suppose taking parts of that particular folklore and then strengthening his character development, as I guess, to
It's a good way of
reinforce
doing
that.
it.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, okay, so that's quite interesting. So essentially, what you're saying is those particular people, that particular beings, energy, spirits, they were considered mimics,
Mm, yeah, because
and
they could.
that's sorry,
These ones, basically, you'd never know they weren't human based off just seeing them. They would look exactly like
right.
humans, but wouldn't be human. And then I've got the medium category, which is the when you see like a shadow of a person and something
Yeah.
looks not quite right, and you can tell something's not quite right just by looking at them. That's this
Yeah.
category. Um,
Okay.
and then that you have a kelpie. I'm going to butcher this because it's Scottish. Boben Sa. Uh, this is Welsh. A Twileth Deg. And this is Norwegian. A Fosgrim. And they're four. Actually, they're all aquatic spirits. Most of them are malicious except the kelpie. Um, and they all live in or around rivers, waterfalls, that kind of thing. Most of the way that you can tell that there's something off is they're almost all like perpetually wet, no matter what the weather's like. So you'd see them and they'd be dripping. The kelpie has like seaweed like hair, so they look almost passable for humans, but there's small details that if you're noticeable enough. But the other thing is they're all insanely, like superhumanly beautiful. And apparently that's what they use
Wow.
to attract people to them. Like the baboon Sith, one of the things was they had like deer legs was one of the things, and they are
Nice.
essentially
Nice.
Scottish vampire fairies, from what I read.
Wow.
And they lure people in with their beauty and then kind of make people dance to the point where they go into a frenzy and then they murder them and drink their blood. Um,
Escalates. It
yeah, a little
escalates
bit,
quite
a little
quickly.
bit.
Quite quickly. Quite quickly.
Um,
But then there was cases though. There is cases. So like in particular in America, um, there is the case of the mass hysteria, which
mhm.
there was a lot of dancing. There was a well-known case. There was based. I think it was in Boston or Massachusetts or near that area.
I think it
But
happened in
there was
Europe as well.
yeah, would get mass dancing. People just dancing. So I mean, there's science, isn't there? What
There's
you know?
oddities that don't quite fit
Yeah,
rationality, and you
yeah,
can kind of find
absolutely.
answers, but they never seem quite right.
No,
Um,
no.
and my low category, which is almost utterly unconvincing as a human, is Leshy, Domovoy, and an Alp. All of them can appear human like, but there is stuff so horribly wrong with it that you would have to have something incredibly wrong with you to be comfortable with that as a person. Like, for example, the Leshy has no hair on their face or head and is missing one of their ears. Um, Domovoy, I can't remember exactly what the description was, but they're basically a spirit that's around your house all the time in Slavic folklore. But they can
Okay.
knock on things and kind of whistle and mimic through, I suppose, disturbances, sort of thing. So that it'd almost be like a poltergeist, I suppose, but they're friendly. You want a
Okay.
domovoy, and you want a domovoy that knows you. Um, and Alps are where nightmares come from. It's the whole story of nightmares, and sleep paralysis demon is basically what an Alp is, but they were called elves, but not like we know them. They were like ugly little gargoyle creatures that sit on your chest.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
but they were kind of human like, but like grotesques on a church were what Alps looked like. So
Oh, hey.
disfigured humans, I suppose. Not something that you trust walking you home at night. Um,
Very, very
yeah.
fair throwaway comment there. Very, very fair. Very fair. I would
um,
agree. I would agree.
yeah.
So
So,
I do have a quick experience I want to share with you because maybe
mhm,
then you can help make sense of it. So um, years and years and years ago, I was visiting family, and we were staying in my daughter at the time. She's a lady now. She's a grown up woman, but at the time she was only about 2 or 3. Um, and the night before, I had a nightmare of a young girl in a white dress standing in the corner of the room with no face, with long black hair. Um, but it was the no face that shocked me, and this was a long time ago. So I wasn't. I've always been interested in the paranormal and stuff like that, but I hadn't developed as a medium. I hadn't done anything like that at this point, so it kind of really did throw me. Anyway, the next day she was playing in her in the room, and I'd pulled the door to because she was making quite a lot of noise, and she just started getting she started to get a bit frustrated with a toy first, but then she just started hysterically crying. Now I learned as we got older that whenever my eldest would get a bit frustrated or a bit angry, she would see shadow figures, or she said for a long time she'd see Abraham Lincoln standing by the door in a room. But this particular time I've gone in and I've kind of spoke to her and calmed her down, and she said she saw a girl with white dress on, long black hair, no face, in the same corner that I had seen her in my sleep state. So is that a mimic? What would you think that would be? Thinking of some of the descriptions that you've given, or
Um, there's a
it's okay not
thing.
to have the
So
answer because I haven't.
there's, there's a creature in like Norse pagan folklore called a mare, which is like a witch's familiar. And the story for a mare is it became called a nightmare because there was a king that offended the witch in some way, shape, or form. I can't remember the small details of the story, but she essentially got frustrated and she said to her mare, "I wish this man would never bother me again." And then the mare took it upon itself to go and essentially murder the king in his sleep. And all of his men couldn't get into his room because there was something stopping the door. And the only thing they heard him shouting was "nightmare, nightmare, nightmare." And then when they got in there, he was just dead. It like suffocated in his bed. And the story goes that the mare is like a familiar of the witch. So I suppose in a way a mimic. But I don't know if there'd be like distortions and things that go alongside that because I guess it seems a bit silly to have like a direct copy of yourself to go and murder someone.
Yeah,
uh,
that's fair enough. That's
I don't-
fair enough. Yeah, I think that that's the one thing that threw us was the no face, and I've never come across anything like it since. So if anyone's watching and ever familiar with this or want to share or get in touch with their stories of the same thing, but yeah, it's very interesting. But thank you, and I'm trying to think about the area we were in and kind of what kind of would relate to that in that terms. But yeah, it's interesting. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I
That's all
cut
right.
you again in your I do apologize.
No, no, you're fine.
Apologize. Sorry,
Um,
Gavin, as you were.
so we'll go on to the next category, which is human likeness by sound. So like the ability to mimic someone. And the high category I've got is probably my least favorite because it's the ability to not only mimic but to mimic someone that you know.
Right.
So a friend, loved one, child, relative, something like that. So you would hear the sound of that person calling to you from the dark, even though you know they're not there. You can hear their voice perfectly coming out of the trees at you.
Oh, yeah, no.
Um, so there's the Leshy, the Puka, and the Domovoy again have the ability to mimic perfectly things that even like you might not have said aloud, and no one really knows in the folklore how they do it. It's just that they're beyond our understanding, and they can manipulate us in ways like they're almost like the Leshy especially is like a trickster in essence. Like he likes confusion, likes manipulation. I actually mentioned him last time with the Dyatlov Pass,
Yes.
um, and it's a massively horrifying creature, really. But yeah, they're the ones that uh, you always think like when you think you hear something and you know it can't possibly be true. That's them in the middle of the forest in the middle of the night. Um,
Oh.
and then
I was gonna
yeah,
say, so when we think about when we were speaking about before about the young person or the person that was in my team, and hearing his own voice call his own animals in the night, is that would that kind of line with the spirit where that could mimic loved ones and people
mm,
that we care about?
like so the I would say it's like a doppelganger, but doppelgangers in the story specifically can't talk.
Right.
They look identical to you and they torment you through the fact that they look like you. They do things, you see them doing things that you wouldn't do, but they don't talk ever. That's the I don't know the weird part about them. But the Domovoy, if you displease it by because they like hardworking, conscientious, look after your home, look after yourself, look after your place, and they will torment you to try and make you do those things. Like they're meant to be a positive driving force, but they still like to have fun, and sometimes that's not fun for us. So it could be a spirit that was in his home already, and he accidentally stepped on some toes, I guess. I don't know. That would suck. Two bad experiences like that in one night, but um,
Yeah, yeah. The numbers were not in his favor, if I'm honest. Um,
should buy a lottery ticket.
yeah, but to be fair, ever since then, we've been all right. So I think he just, yeah, I think maybe they were like, whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah. But yeah, two terrible experiences in one night. Probably not a fan of, but yeah.
um,
Lessons were learned.
yeah. So the next category is medium for passable, but not normally someone you know. So you'd hear like a stranger's voice or something similar to that. Like when you hear people say like, "Oh, I heard in the water someone screaming for help," there was no one there. That's sort
Oh
of like you
wow.
wouldn't. This sounds human, but not someone that you'd recognize. Then you've got a thing called the Nixie. Again, this is two Scottish names. They're going to butcher it, but Bien Nicey, I think, and Bo.
Reunite. Yeah,
It's it's pronounced Bean now, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Boban Sith C, I think is this. Um, and again, they're kind of more Highland myths, really. But they're not known for being able to be super convincing with familiarity. They're more strangers in the dark kind of thing. And the last one is mimicry is purely visual with almost no written recording of auditory mimicry, which is the doppelganger, the selkie, and the kelpie.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, they look like the selkie and the kelpie are a bit odd because both can appear as horses, as one of their other thing, or human. Or the selkie is seal folk, actually, sorry, and the kelpie is the horse. And
So
neither speaks.
so I we've you've done an amazing job kind of thinking about kind of explaining how they can present. I know that we've spoken before as well about how we can perceive things that we don't always see things how they are. Our brain kind of fills in the blanks, isn't it? So I know that when we spoke before, we was talking about the crow, and that
Hmm.
the fact the crow is not necessarily black; it's like
Yeah, it's like
iridescent,
iridescent. Yeah, same
and
with
that
ravens.
and like you can see like the purple blue tinge to their feathers, but that's about as far as it goes, right? So we see that
Yeah,
as black. So if we think about mimics as well, and the way that present themselves, how what I'm trying to ask is how do we our brains change how we see that though? How can that present in different ways?
I mean, I suppose like it's if they're a part of like another. I don't want to say like another plane of existence, but like they have access to stuff like animals do, where their senses are so massive in comparison to ours. And ours are so small but so refined towards always keeping us safe. We're so paranoid as like a species. We always look for danger in everything. We always scan for things that we know that we don't know. If you were going to be like a predatory thing, even in folklore, the thing that you're going to prey on is familiarity all the time. If you're comfortable with it, you're not going to be as protective. You're not going to be as guarded. And you're more likely to just walk into a situation and not have like any. Like if you hear a lion, you're instantly going to get your back up. If you hear someone you know shout your name in the distance, you're not going to think twice. You're probably going to run for it because nothing sounds like that person other than that person, right? Until you get there and it's not them. And it's something that's worse than a lion, I suppose. and then it's too late. You're by yourself. You're alone. It's dark. They have all the senses that you don't have. It's kind of like the perfect fear that we've got. That could be where the folklore comes from. I don't know.
I think that's interesting. So, is there any kind of known cases of evident like a case where this has happened or anything that's documented? I know we see a
There's,
lot on. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I know in America, I think I can't remember exactly where it is, but there's a phrase in the communities where they say if you hear your name in the forest, you didn't, because it's just like I guess it's a psychological thing because it's still wild, untamed, and God knows what out there. There's easier just to assume that you didn't hear anything than you actually did. Um,
We did an interview a little while ago last year with someone called the Grey Witch, um, and his name's Jade, and he does a lot on TikTok. I think I've actually got his name wrong. He does a lot on TikTok about his nan who was a witch, and the things that his nan taught him growing up, and they were near Apache Mountain. Is it about yeah? And he said that himself. If you heard your name being called in the woods. He said the F you didn't. But he would also say, if you don't look directly into the tree line, something you don't know what's looking back at you, and also thinking about, you know, whistling as well in woods is
and
also something.
indoors.
Oh
Shouldn't whistle
really?
indoors either. You
I didn't
invite
know
things
that.
in. Yeah. Mm.
Fair enough.
Never whistle indoors.
Noted.
Yeah.
My whole household can't whistle, so we're safe. We're all good. None of us can whistle. That's wonderful. But yeah, that's just really interesting. And I think as well, like I said, when we think a bit about the paranormal folklore and stuff, there is a lot in our culture in different folklores where mimics come up quite a lot and they're presented in different ways. And then they're drip fed into the media. So, like I said, I went with the strain. That's where I become familiar with the particular name. I can't pronounce it.
Strigoi.
There you go. And it wasn't until I was in Romania and they started doing this talk about Vlad the Impaler that I heard it and I was like, oh, okay. And then started looking into it a little bit more myself. So um yeah, it's kind of drip fed into us in a way that we don't really perceive it as something that could be something that exists outside of the narrative of the creative media and stuff. But I think we lose that though, don't we? When we think about what we're taught and stuff in schools and even just like self-directed learning from a young age, we're not taught much about our folklore.
It's one of the things that are the first thing to go when, like, we've given into technology and conventional religions and stuff. We've given up on who we were, who we are, where we come from, what our roots are. Um, like, it's only in the last few years that I've really discovered paganism, and then I've really started like exploring my family heritage, which is why I know a fair bit about Slavic folklore now. Is just from me reading up about it now because it's not massively conventional. You don't hear a lot about it in the media or see things about it because it's not as common as like Norse paganism, which is massively misportrayed, or Celtic or shamanic and things like that. It's all normally horribly portrayed, and they just take the bits that sound good for TV. Um, yeah, I think it's something that if people are interested in it, you should just give it a read. That's what a lot of people say. Like with Norse paganism, there's no centralized religion. The only thing you can do is pick up a book
Yeah.
and make what you will with it.
And I think that's sometimes though, is I will say when I first started with kind of I started as a spiritualist. So I was under a teacher and I got a lot of my learning from her um and within the communities that I moved in. But actually, as time went on and I went through my journey and I kind of tapped into paganism, it feels like there's so much out there that it feels almost a little bit overwhelming on where to start. And
100%.
also thinking about what is the agenda of this person that's telling me this story. I learnt massively when I go back to spiritualism about the story of Helen Duncan Smith, who, within the spiritualist movement, or I've heard of her being spoken about in the spiritualist movement, that she passed away from doing a demonstration of ectoplasm, so a trance and a physical mediumship, and there was a raid, and the place got raided, and the ectoplasm went back into her body so quickly that all of her organs shut down and she died. Right? But actually, when you go look through history, the history books, and what's been written, she was the last woman that was tried for witchcraft in Scotland under the Witchcraft Act. And yes, she was the places that she was demoing it did get raided because it was illegal at the time to do those kind of things. Um, but yeah, there was no record of that happening. So I think sometimes we kind of need to look at I'm not necessarily saying people have got an agenda, but what's the agenda? Why are they telling you that story from that particular perspective? I think that's my biggest thing when I talk to people about going and doing their self-directed learning, because we can so easily fall into the trap of believing something because someone else said it was true,
Hmm.
which can be quite tricky. So it's always good to be resourceful and be quite broad in your research as well, I feel.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But that's definitely something when we think about the mimics, it's definitely something that I will take forward when I go back into doing investigations and stuff. Because I think when we link right back to where we started, you said, well, sometimes we do that investigation, sometimes we get in that miscommunication, because actually what we're communicating, what's stepping in, isn't necessarily the spirit we're talking to, but the guide or the generation that's wanting that particular communication to stop. So I think that's quite interesting and not something that I really considered before.
There's also like so there's a one of the mimics, Fetch, is Irish, and like the origins for it are massively confusing. From what I was reading, there's like evidence of it all the way back to like 1000 AD, and it's been like confused over various different things. Different people have argued about what it actually means. And one of the things it's actually linked to is in Norse paganism, there's a belief of a thing called a fylgja, which is like an alter ego, like a spirit guide, and everybody's born with one. Um, and they're normally female as well, which when I find a lot of paranormal investigations and things, I find it kind of funny that like what you end up communicating with is actually a female, but then your spirit guide 9 out of 10 times, according to Norse paganism and Norse stories, is probably a female. So you're not actually communicating with anything that is originally there. Potentially, it could be the Fylgja, which is like an alter ego, a version of yourself in the spirit world. So you are essentially talking to a version of yourself that isn't here and that you can't see most of the time. Um,
And I think if we think about science, science says the same thing but gives a different kind of rationale. So science basically says that when we speak to spirit, then we're doing this research. All we're doing is we're communicating with what we're projecting,
mm,
transference. Um, so essentially, it's kind of saying the same thing in a roundabout way, but looking at it from a different perspective. I think that's quite common as well when it comes to research. There's always the same the the sentiment is the same, but the rationale and the hypothesis around it changes. So yeah, I find that quite interesting. Ben also said into the chat, he said, "I best stop whistling indoors then."
apparently, it's inviting in things that are around, so it's not even particularly like a targeted thing. You can read into it and probably make a better, more informed decision than me because I'm quite superstitious anyway. If I don't have to step on a crack, I won't.
I agree. I concur. And those free drains can do one.
I won't walk through
Absolutely
a
not gonna.
circle of mushrooms. I won't talk to trees that look too old. Uh,
You'll have to explain. So the talking to trees that are too old.
yeah, it's
What's
where
that
the
one?
Fae live. You don't talk to the
Oh,
Fae, and you don't give stuff a name around the Fae. Now, there's I think it's a Scottish story about a fae asking a guy what things that he's carrying are, and he's like, "What's this?" And he says, "Oh, it's a sword." And the fae takes it because he's given it a name. So the fae take things that you give names to. So then the next time he goes by, he goes, "Oh, this isn't anything. It's a nothing, and nothing has a name." And it's
Oh,
and they can take people and things that you give a name to, and it's tricky. So don't talk to trees; they're too old either.
so Old Knobbly is one that we need to avoid. Old Knobbly is the tree that's linked to Manning Tree with the Witchfinder General, which is essentially it's meant to be
Yeah,
where the Dunking Pool is for giving
don't
wild
talk to it.
birth
Don't talk
fairs.
to it. Don't tell it things.
I got an EVP there once. I got a Ben has said avoiding free grates is a big part of my life. Yes, Ben. Yes, absolutely. I'm apps. They can do one. Where's even where did that? Maybe it's the number three. Maybe it's the number
Hmm.
three, which is what's caused a. Because I'm thinking, what part of any world would free drains be like? Oh, better not do that. But it must be the number three. But I absolutely, yeah, will not.
Three's massive, like in folklore, going back forever and a day. Like there's
Yeah.
a I can't remember which one it is. There's one of the mimics that is essentially like a weird genie. Um, I can't remember. I wrote a little bit about each of them because the beanie is like a weird, haggard
Is
old
this the
woman.
Scottish one?
Yeah, and she's said to like be seen washing bloody burial shrouds in the Highland. And essentially, if you can sneak up on her and get in between her and the water without her seeing you, because if she sees you, she'll whip you with the linens, and then you'll lose a limb of her choosing. Um, but if you can get between her and the water without her seeing you, she will answer 3 questions and grant you 3 wishes.
It's not a risk I'm willing to
No,
not a risk I'm willing to take, to be fair.
no, I like my limbs where they
It's
are.
yeah. It's giving the Black Knight. It's mere flesh wound. There was so I think as well, like I think there's a crossover between these and the stories of the witches. So there is in particular a place in Alton. It's beautiful. It's um it's right next door to Alton Towers. It's called the Old Chained Oak Inn, the Old Chained Oak B&B. It's stunning. It's a beautiful farm. It's got converted barns, and it's also got a shepherd's hut, fire pit. It's got a beautiful lake. It's all privately owned. It's absolutely stunning. They do the best breakfast in the morning in the whole entire world. It's incredible. But on the actual grounds is a oak tree. It's really old, and it's got chains, iron chains hanging off of them. So
It's
the
because that's where
story
the Fae lived.
well, I'll tell you the story, and you'll be able to go absolutely right. So there is some really steep steps going up to the tree, a really old tree. I'll send you a picture of Gavin. Actually, you know what? I'll post it on the page as well for people to have a look. There's a really old oak tree, and there's some steps that go up to it, and there's these really old cast iron chains. Anyway, so the story goes is there was a ride named after this as well Alton Towers. But the story goes is that the Earl of the area was riding through in a horse and carriage. He was a bit peeved off because he'd lost some money on some gambling or something. I don't know. This might just be fluff, but add people added to it. And he come across a beggar lady that was standing opposite this tree. Now this tree is set again in the grounds of this Airbnb or B&B. It is a beautiful woods all around the property, and it all is all part of this property. So you walk through the woods, and you get to the tree. There is a massive trowel, and this allegedly is where the a horse and cart come through. And she stopped and asked for him for some money, and he said no. So there might have been more that to it, but she got really annoyed, and she basically said, "I curse you. Whenever a bough of this tree breaks, you are going to lose someone. This is what she said to him. Anyway, he went off on his way, and a couple of months went by, and there was a massive lightning storm, and one of the boughs broke, and the one of the loved ones of this earl passed away that night. So the legend says that the wife went to the tree, and she's the one that ordered for it to all be chained up. Um, and there's and it's interesting because when you talk to the people that live on the farm themselves, there is so many people that won't go onto the farm because of the tree. There is some people that have taken clippings from the tree to grow their own tree, and that they've had nothing but bad luck since having the tree onto their property. It is an incredible location. It's beautiful. That the tree and also the hosts are amazing. But this tree is it's just an interesting story. It's in such a small little village, but when you think about mimics, like I said, the witch and the losing of the limbs and things like that, and then the cut that she chose cast iron chains to go onto
That's
the tree.
so cast iron. Well, I say historically, in almost anything to do with any form of folklore, iron is one of the big things. Like with vampires, iron repels them. Doesn't necessarily have to be a crucifix, like Strigoi and things like that, repelled by not only garlic. I don't know why garlic is actually a thing that repels them, but also iron. Almost any of the mimics, iron is a big thing that repels them, especially Fae as well. Like there's in the story of the Scottish vampire fairies, the guy and his, I think, two brothers are hunting, and then they come across this group of women, and they end up like inviting them to dance, and the one guy is just like, something's wrong, like I don't know what's going on, and then it comes to pass that he remembers a folklore story that his grandma used to say when they were kids, and it was about these weird women that lived in the woods and would dance with men and then eventually murder them. And he remembered that in the last village they were in, they had new shoes shot onto their horses, which were iron shoes. And he ran to the horses, and the women chased him all the way to the horses, but wouldn't get any closer because of the iron that was all around him. And there's stories like that you always find around it. Even like spirits and ghosts and things like that are all repelled by iron. So the fact that the tree's wrapped in iron, that's because the Fae lived there.
Just because it's obvious the fact. And to be fair, it's a very valid point, right? It is a beautiful place, and the tree is really old. But the tree has started to grow around the iron, which honestly, I'll send you some pictures. I'll put some on the page as well. I did a TikTok a few years ago about it because it was just such a cool place, and I don't think not a lot of people know about it. And it's one of those that you probably when I wanted to investigate and I asked the owners were more than happy with me doing anything that, as long as I was respectful, wasn't causing any damage, wasn't breaking anything or anything like that. I had permission. They were happy for me to go ahead and do like a little mini investigation, which I did during the day because at night time, I don't know, it just kind of gave me the creeps a little bit, actually, if I'm honest. But yeah, so I would say, it's a great location to book if anyone's interested in a stay Alton Towers and an impromptu like investigation. It's perfect. Um, but yeah, it's just a story that stayed with me. And it's like, yeah. No, Gavin's like, no, don't. I don't want to go. Don't
No,
make me.
no.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I didn't get too close. I didn't get too close, but I did actually communicate with a spirit of a girl, a lady, um, and she dated quite far back, and she was there to meet someone she'd actually fallen pregnant by, and he had asked her to meet him there, and she come to a very unfortunate end. And I got that through the spirit box and some K2 hits and stuff. So, and we weren't there for very long, but yeah, we did pick up on that, and that was when I was kind of on the steps and stuff. But yeah, it is a cool little location. But I valid Gavin, valid. But I think there will be an opportunity for me to kind of take you to that church, one day if ever you fancy it, to have a look around. That'd be really cool.
yeah, that'd be
I
cool.
know that we've got a couple of events coming up together as well, so there will be an opportunity definitely to kind of look at that. But yeah, we've come to the end of the show. Thank you so much for sharing all your kind of your wisdom on
No, it's been
folklore
good.
and mimics. Yeah, it's been really interesting. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone that's joined us, and thank you Ben so much for chatting with us in the chat. We are back next in 2 weeks' time. I will do a post, a little advert on what we're going to be covering, but we're always going to be live on the YouTube channel. So make sure you give us a subscribe just to kind of keep up to date and make sure you get notifications as well. Is there anything business you wanted to share? Where you're going to be in the next couple of weeks? Any events?
I'm in Peterborough for an event on Saturday, and I'm in
Nice.
Ringsfield where I'm giving my first like workshop on the
No,
Norse creation story.
that's incredible.
Yeah, nerve-wracking. I don't do public talking.
You're doing just fine. And I
Yeah.
think one thing I would say is that our paths crossed because we met at an event. Um, and you also you did the Paracon that was in Colchester.
Mm.
And every single person that come to your stall just said how incredibly knowledgeable you were and how you took time to talk to them and share your stories and stories on Norse paganism. So I would say if anyone is able to go along to them events just to come and say hi to Gavin, definitely go and check out his business and his creations too. They're really, really
Thank you.
cool. But yes, thank you, Ben. You're welcome, and have a good evening. And we'll say good night from us, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you, everyone.